Estate planning is an important and everlasting gift you can give your family. Suze Orman. You have the power to be the boss of your own life. I'm your host, Monica Allen. I'm a wife, mom, entrepreneur, best-selling author, lifelong learner, and your biz bestie. I have a love and passion for all things small business. Growing my own company from $700 to over 7 figures annually, my goal is to bring you inspiration, business-focused topics and tips, encouragement, and a community that helps you launch, grow, and scale your business, whether you are a dreamer, a side hustler, or a seasoned entrepreneur. You are listening to the Become Your Own Boss podcast. Last week's episode 174, was entitled The Ripple Effects of Financial Wellness. And I entitled the episode that because I had the opportunity to interview Adam Tolliver, who is a certified financial planner. And if you haven't had an opportunity to listen to that episode, please go back and do so. But in talking to Adam, I really felt like I needed to dive a little bit deeper into this subject of estate planning, generational wealth, leaving a legacy, all of those things. And I think so many times when we hear the words estate planning, we think that we have to have this huge estate. I think of Dallas or Dynasty, where you have these families with these huge homes and all of these assets. But truth be told, many of us are working really hard to build our businesses or to build our careers and obtain assets. We have homes, we have cars, we may have land, we may have other property. And so in order to protect those things before our passing or before any of us get sick, even though none of us like thinking about any of that, it is important that we do estate planning. And no, we may not have billion-dollar estates, but if we want to leave a legacy behind or that have a ripple effect in our work, then we must think about these things in advance. Really quickly, before I dive into some really practical questions around having conversations with our family members, I want to just talk a little bit about the ripple effect. And I love the visual of this. I love the metaphor of this, because if you throw a rock into a creek or a lake, you know exactly how that ripple effect goes. It goes out and eventually hits the shore. We may not see it all the way through that process, but the ripple effect is real. And so the ripple effect can be good or bad. And if we're throwing in rocks and we're creating these ripples when it comes to our assets and our financials, we want to make sure that we're putting out positive ripples when it comes to our family. So for me, one of my biggest goals is to make sure that my kiddos are financially literate. And there was a lot of things that I had to learn as I grew up. I didn't know much about credit cards and interest rates and compounding interest and investing and all of those things. And so for me, in order to leave that legacy for my children and hopefully for my children's children, it's important that I make sure they learn those things. And those aren't things that are taught in school. So as a family, we've got to be proactive, or as families, if you're listening to this, we've got to be proactive to make sure that our kids are learning these things, because it's not taught in schools. And it's up to us to make sure that they learn that and that we continue the ripple effect of that financial literacy. This episode is being brought to you by Zeus's Closet, where we're like a tattoo shop for your clothes. The weather is getting cooler, and we just launched our soft shell jackets. These jackets are absolutely great for your business logo. They make great gifts for clients as well as for your team. They're lightweight but warm. So get yours at the link in the show notes today. I feel like Adam and I had a really great conversation, but I also felt like we kind of scratched the surface. And so I wanted to do a bit more research around what are things that we need to talk about as a family. What conversations should we be having with our parents and our grandparents to really make sure that we are set up for success as things in life continue to move forward and change. And so I have a list of questions here. If you subscribe to the Become Your Own Boss community, then you have gotten this in my most recent newsletter in November. But just in case you don't, I want to walk through these questions around a few areas that you can talk to your family about. And the first one is number 1, understanding assets and liabilities. So each one of these will have a couple of questions. The first one under this is, can you share with us an overview of the family's assets and liabilities? The next question, where can we find the documentation for property deeds, business ownership, or other significant assets? Number 2, insurance policies. Do we have a list of current insurance policies, including life, health, and property insurance? Second question here, where do you keep your insurance documents, and who are the beneficiaries? Now, truthfully, some of these conversations can get interesting, especially if you don't already have an open, communicative relationship with someone. So you may need to proceed sensitively, but knowing these things are important. Like, I know I can ask my mom any of these questions and she'll be fine. But I do know that there are families that don't have that open communication. And so that may be a little bit more difficult. If you have a situation, I've been thinking about this as I'm reading through these questions. If you have a family situation where someone may get upset knowing that they're not the beneficiary, then, I'm not really kind of sure how you work around that. But one of the things that Adam talked about is if things are put in a trust or an irrevocable trust, then the trust actually handles how things are taken care of within that person's estate. So that's another thing to think about. The life insurance would actually go to the trust and not to an individual person written on the policy. So think about those things, have those conversations. I know they can be hard. I get it. Okay, moving on to number 3. This is under the topic of estate planning. Question here, have you created a will or living trust? And where can we locate these documents? Number 2, or the second question under here is there an appointed executor or trustee, and are they aware of their responsibilities? Number 4, healthcare directives and power of attorney. Questions here, do you have a healthcare directive or durable power of attorney in place? The second question here, who is designated to make decisions on your behalf should you be unable to do so? Okay, number 5, digital assets. Many of us have digital assets now. We have social media. We have all of these things. So here are the questions. How should we handle your digital assets like social media, online banking, and digital wallets? Another question, are there passwords or encryption keys we need to be aware of? My husband and I have all this kind of stuff in our lockbox. He knows my passwords. I know his. I know how to find them because, nowadays passwords are so complicated. But we have those in a lockbox where we can both get to them. Number 6, final wishes. These can be some tough questions, but here we go. Can we discuss your final wishes, including arrangements for your funeral or memorial service? Second question here, are there specific cultural or personal practices you want us to honor? So, again, can be some tough questions, but I have known people who have had all of their arrangements written out and someone just knew where they were so they could make sure that things went the way they wanted and there wasn't a whole bunch of family contention around what to do and what not to do. Okay, jumping into number 7 here. Financial advisors and legal contacts. Questions, who are your financial advisor? Or who is your financial advisor, lawyers, or any other professionals who can help manage your affairs or who helps manage your affairs currently? Second question here, can you provide contact information for your trusted advisors? Number 8, debt and obligations. Are there outstanding debts or obligations we should be aware of? Debtors want to get paid. Just know that. Second question here, how are these expected to be managed in the event of your passing? Number 9, succession planning. Question, for family-owned businesses, is there a succession plan in place? Second question here, what are your wishes regarding the continuation or sale of the business? And last question is around charitable intentions. And I'm not saying that all of these are covering every single thing that you should talk to your parents, your spouse, or anybody about. But I think these are a great place to start and you can dive further into the conversations. But charitable intentions, are there any charitable contributions or legacies you wish to leave behind? And last question here is, how do you envision these being handled? So remember, the goal is for these questions to ensure clarity and preparedness And as Suze Orman stated, and even Adam mentioned this, is being prepared and having a clear plan is a gift. You can keep down a lot of confusion amongst family members, so there's not people bickering over things. Clarity is kindness. I've heard that so many times, and that is what we want to do in this process, is to be very clear and to make sure that the person or loved one that passes is honored the way they want to be honored, and that their legacy continues for years to come. So again, I know these are can be tough things to talk about, but I wanted to bring this up because for me, having a grandfather who did not have his things in order for his family, even though I have no idea how it impacted me, I can't turn back the hands of time, but I do know that it left questions amongst my mom and my uncle around what they could have done as far as education or the way they lived and things like that. And don't get me wrong, they weren't living in these terrible, horrible conditions, but it just begs to ask the question, how could it have been better? Could it have been better? And so I want to make sure that as I bring you episodes, that I'm bringing you stuff that's valuable to you and your family. I feel like that is what being your own boss is really all about. It's about being the boss of every area of your life. And initially, when I started this podcast, I really wanted to focus on helping people start businesses that would succeed and beat the statistics of business failure. Also, bring people insights on things that I didn't know about when I started my business. So to help other people have a better and smoother path. And though I feel like the podcast does do that, I also think it's important that the podcast support us all in being the boss of every area of our life. And that includes our finances. That includes our finances beyond us here right now. Whether you have kids or not, if you're working hard on your business and you're trying to grow it, you are building an asset. What happens to that asset when you're no longer here? Do you leave it to a charity? Are you leaving it to kids? Are you leaving it to other family members? But thinking through those things now is important. And so that is why we're talking about this today. And I do think the holidays are just a good time to think through this kind of stuff through. It's also a good time to think about these types of things as we move into a new year, which is crazy. It's almost 2024. But beginning to think about those things as we move into a new year, what our goals are, what our missions are, how do we want things to look in the future? And so part of that is planning. Planning is a key element to all of those things. And speaking of planning, as we plan for the new year, 2024, that's right around the corner, I will be hosting my Live Life by Your Design workshop on December 7th. I will have 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the evening. Now, the Live Life by Your Design workshop is really an opportunity to dive into getting a vision around your 2024. There is a step-by-step process that I walk you through, and personally, I think it's very helpful. I do it for myself each year. I've done it for other people, and I really have found it valuable, and they found it valuable as well, as to really getting things done that's in our mission and in our vision for the new year. So join me on December 7th. You can find the link here in the show notes to sign up, as well as on my Instagram bio at Become Your Own Boss podcast. Also, if you go to monicaallen.com, don't forget to sign up for the Become Your Own Boss community. I will send an email out there as well for you to register for the workshop. Thanks so much for listening and tuning into the podcast today. I truly hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family and friends. This is such a splendid time of year. I enjoy it so much, even though it's highly pressurized for me because our business is usually really, really busy. However, I love the time with family, with friends. I love the food. I love the pies and the cake and all of the great things that the holidays bring. I'm super excited to dive into a little eggnog, not too much because that stuff is so high in calories, but I look forward to this holiday season and I hope you all do as well. Don't forget to take a moment to rate, review, and share the podcast. Please share this episode with a family member or friend. It truly can make a difference between a gain or loss when it comes to your family's legacy and that financial wellness ripple. Remember, now is the time. Now is the time to level up, leave a legacy, and become your own boss.